months in 1 month counts as 2 months. We certainly expect people of any income to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. And so if people are not able to be self-sufficient, then this negative factor is going to bear very heavily against them in a decision about whether they'll be able to become a legal permanent resident.
As the Trump administration pushes new immigration bills, one of the companies involved in last week's Immigration and Customs Enforcement raid, Cook Foods, is holding a job fair today. That job fair will take place in 2 of the companies. I can't even read this. I'm so sorry. There's a light in front of me. That job fair today will be focused on filling jobs at 2 of the company's Mississippi food processing plants. This comes after 680 workers were swept up in the actions last Wednesday. The enforcement actions themselves were just a few days after the shooting in El Paso, where the gunman allegedly targeted Latino shoppers in Walmart. On Sunday, Acting Secretary of Homeland Security Kevin McAleenan said the timing was coincidental.
Given the emotions of the country right now, in hindsight, do you wish this raid didn't happen this week?
The timing was unfortunate. These are enforcement operations that are part of their daily cycle. Something like this has been planned for over a year. This is a criminal investigation with 14 federal warrants issued by a judge, and ICE had to follow through on that. It was already planned and in motion.
Joining us now, MSNBC correspondent Mariana Atencio, live in Forest, Mississippi. Mariana, let's first talk about this company. They hired over 600 of these workers when the ICE raid happened. Is the company not being held accountable for their hiring practices?
Nope, life doesn't pay.
So, Steph, this company specifically, Cook Food, is actually responsible for 243 workers that were detained. And you said it, this is a historic raid, the biggest single state raid in the history of this country. And this company isn't facing any charges yet. Now, the acting Secretary McLean did tell Chuck Todd that there is an ongoing investigation, so that may change. But right now, Steph, they are open for business. In fact, they are recruiting right across the street at that job fair where the media isn't allowed inside. They were posting it on Facebook to fill these jobs. And we spoke to 2 people here who came to actively recruit for these jobs, to fill out applications. This is what they had to say about this new, quote, opportunity. Let's hear from them.
A lot of people on social media are saying that it's sad and, for other people that are going back. But to me, not trying to have a cold heart, I just feel like it's more of a top opportunity.
Better paying job. I'm in tax credit when they stop making that minimum wage.
So as the company is trying to continue business as usual, the only people charged here were these workers, many of them parents, who right now are facing lots of legal action, and many of them haven't even been released. We know that at least 200 within that group of the 680 have been released, and now they cannot work and provide for their families.
Stephanie, Mariana, has the company answered any questions as to why they hired these undocumented workers? Those people who you spoke to there, they're Americans. They could have gotten those jobs at any time.
So the company has said that they basically relied on the E-Verified system, but they're not responsible for people who show up with fake Social Security documents and the like. But again, when you're talking about almost 250 people in a small town, we still have lots of questions that aren't being answered, and there is no representative from Cook Foods, which by the way has no relation to Cook Industries, out here to answer any of our questions. Stephanie?
You're going to keep asking. Mariana, thank you so much. Mariana Atencio joining us from Mississippi. Next,
pushing right off.
Of Jeffrey Epstein's death in prison, conspiracy theories sprouted up all over the internet. Who and what truths are behind it? If you're watching Russian Rule. We didn't have to stop the movie.
I didn't have to call an ambulance. I didn't have to contact your family.
Because your AFib didn't cause a blood clot that led to a stroke. Not today.
We discussed how your stroke risk increases over time. So even though you were feeling fine, you chose Xarelto to help keep you protected.
Once daily Xarelto significantly lowers the risk of stroke in people with AFib not caused by a heart valve problem. In fact, over 96% of people remain stroke-free.
taking Xarelto without talking to your doctor, as this may increase your risk of stroke. While taking a spinal injection increases the risk of blood clots, which may cause paralysis, the inability to move. You may bruise more easily or take longer to bleed to
They don't
stop.
want to go.
Xarelto can cause serious and in rare cases fatal. It may increase your risk of bleeding if you take certain medicines. Get help right away for unexpected bleeding or unusual bruising. Do not take Xarelto if you have an artificial heart valve or abnormal bleeding. Before starting, tell your doctor about all planned medical or dental procedures and any kidney or liver problems. Be sure
Look
to
how you fucking
help protect yourself from stroke. Ask your doctor if it's time for Xarelto. To learn more about cost and how Janssen can help, visit Xarelto.com.
Life isn't a straight line. Things happen.
Let's go.
Then sometimes you can find yourself heading in a new direction. But at Fidelity, we help you prepare for the unexpected. With retirement planning and advice for what you need today and tomorrow. Because when you're with Fidelity, a partner who makes sure every step is clear,
Too far back.
there's nothing to stop you from moving forward.
I don't keep track of regrets, and I don't have to use, but what I do count on is Boost.
Delicious Boost High Protein Nutritional Drink has 20 grams of protein, along with 26 essential vitamins and minerals. Boost High Protein. Be up for life.
Yes, it's the first word in any new discovery. But when allergies are back, the excitement fades. However, helps you say yes with Vax's non-drowsy allergy relief. Turn any half-hearted yes
What's it?
into an all-in yes.
Yeah.
With your life, despite your allergies.
Start bugs in your house? Stop using traditional insecticides and get rid of them. Get Zero. Deadly for bugs, safe to use around
I'm just
coming
looking for
Keep up these viruses for you. It targets nervous system receptors only in living insects, not in people or pets. Zero is powerful and contains essential oils that are natural enemies of bugs. It doesn't need harsh chemicals to work. Available now at select Target and Home Depot stores.
Our friends recommended a couple of pros to help us remodel our kitchen. After reading the ratings on Angie's List, we felt really confident hiring them.
Find all the pros you need to know. All for free at AngiesList.com.
Sick and fucking tired of it.
Where to find the best deal? What's that?
Carter, 2 gram below market value, 5-star dinner rating.
Fucking sick and tired of it.
Car Gurus. Find great deals from top-rated dealers near you.
Finding it hard to stay on top of things.
A faster laptop can help. Plus, tech support to stay worry-free.
Worry-free. Boom.
Now save up to 40% on all furniture. Up to 40% at Office Depot Office Max or OfficeDepot.com.
Welcome back to Dolce & Gabbana. Jeffrey Epstein's apparent suicide quickly led to a flood of conspiracy theories online in efforts to paint a different picture of how the sex offender actually died. Hashtags linking powerful figures like President Trump and the Clinton family to Epstein's death trended over the weekend. Even the president himself retweeted a conspiracy video about Epstein and Clinton, despite the fact that no evidence of foul play has emerged. Joining me now, NBC legal analyst, my friend Danny Savalas. Danny, we've heard from Attorney General Bill Barr saying he is appalled, he is outraged, action must be taken. He would be the person in charge of said action being taken. So do we know about any formal investigation around surrounding how this happened, meaning how, as in Epstein's death?
Corrections officials have to conduct an investigation because, believe it or not, Stephanie, they can expect that Epstein's estate or the folks left behind will bring a lawsuit against prison officials or jail officials for allowing this suicide to happen. Prisons and jails are not automatically liable for an inmate's suicide, but constitutionally they have a 14th Amendment right to mental health care, including protection from suicide. And if they are, the magic words are deliberately indifferent to a known risk that an inmate will commit suicide, they will actually be civilly liable. So that's why the investigation, the internal investigation, is so critical in this case.
Many people are concerned that the investigation around Epstein's wrongdoing, the conspiracy around that, and the co-conspirators, they worry that that's going to die away. But will it really? Because one of the reasons the public has cared so much about this is about the sweetheart deal we got in Florida, about this idea that the richest, most powerful people are allowed to not follow the law. His death and the fact that it was allowed to happen puts more scrutiny on that same argument.
The criminal investigation and prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein himself ends with his death. But almost nothing else ends in terms of civil cases or other criminal investigations of other people in his circle. Now, without a
But
doubt.
are there other criminal investigations? If he were standing trial, all those big financiers, those political bigwigs might actually get subpoenaed. There's nothing to subpoena them for now, is there?
That's not true. I mean, if there's a civil lawsuit against his estate, they could be brought in through civil discovery. And also, if there's an ongoing criminal investigation, those folks may be targeted, especially now, politically, for optics reasons. The Department of Justice wants to blame someone for this. Epstein is now gone. They are going to turn their eyes to other targets and people to investigate. That is a strong likelihood. They want someone to answer for this criminal conduct. So they will be looking, possibly more now than ever, for somebody to be held responsible. And all that evidence they see in the Jeffrey Epstein investigation can be used against other prospective defendants. In fact, they don't even have standing to challenge a search, even if it was unlawful, of Epstein's property or his premises.
Now that he's dead.
Now that he's, not just because he's dead, but because if his house was searched, anyone who didn't live at that house doesn't have any grounds to challenge a search of that house. So the investigation against anyone else, if there is one, will continue. The civil cases will absolutely continue. And paradoxically enough, a potential lawsuit, an investigation against the jail, against the correction center, the MCC, will continue by the potential plaintiffs, which are Epstein survivors.
Just saying he's not going away anytime soon. There's even more questions today. Danny Savalas, thank you so much. Next, it has been 2 years since the deadly white supremacist rallies in Charlottesville, Virginia. Now attorneys are going after those groups with the same law that once dismantled the Ku Klux Klan. Will it work? You're watching Russian Rules.
Humera patients, you inspire us. The way you triumph over adversity and live your lives. That's why we redesigned Humera. We wanted to make the experience better for you. Now there's less pain immediately following the injection. We've reduced the size of the needle and removed the citrate buffers. And we have the same effectiveness you know and trust. Humera citrate-free is here. A little change can make a big difference. Humera can lower your ability to fight infections, serious and sometimes fatal infections, including tuberculosis and cancers, including lymphoma, have happened, as with blood, liver, and nervous system problems, serious allergic reactions, and new or worsening heart failure. Tell your doctor if you've been to areas where certain fungal infections are common, and if you've had TB, hepatitis B, or protein infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Don't start Humera if you have an infection. Ask your doctor about Humera citrate-free. Here's to you.
Itchy skin distracting you? Cortisone 10. #1 doctor recommended itch fighter works fast, and relief lasts 10 full hours. Hold it helps, so you can stay focused. Cortisone 10. Feel the heal. My boss.
Hi, I'm Terry Slow with Business, your business solution company. Does your business need money? Whether you need 10,000 or 10 million, you can count on Newtek, the nation's largest non-bank lender guaranteed lender. Newtek can help you expand and grow. With a simple phone interview, you can pre-qualify you in just 48 hours. And with rates as low as 6%, you can see why so many businesses turn to Newtek. To see how easy getting a loan is, contact Newtek, your business solution company today.
Sandals. More quality inclusions than any other resort to the planet. Call 800-SANDS.
Do you have a life insurance policy you no longer need? Now you can sell your policy, even a term policy, for an immediate cash payment. Call Coventry Direct to learn more.
We thought we had planned carefully for our retirement.
But we quickly realized we needed a way to supplement our income.
Our friends sold their policy to help pay their medical bills. That got me thinking. Maybe selling our policy could help with our retirement.
I'm skeptical. So I did some research and called Coventry Direct. They explain life insurance is a valuable asset that can be sold.
We learned we could sell all of our policy or keep part of it with no future payments. Who knew? We sold our policy. Now we can relax and enjoy our retirement as we had planned.
If you have $100,000 or more of life insurance, you may qualify to sell your policy. Don't cancel or let your policy lapse.
big project, like remodeling a kitchen, HomeAdvisor is always free to use. Compare prices, read reviews, and find the best local pros at HomeAdvisor.com or download the free app.
Too many people in pain settle for a restless night's sleep. There's a better choice. Aleve PM, the only one to combine the safe sleeping and the 12-hour pain relieving strength of Aleve that dares to last into the morning, so you feel refreshed. Aleve PM, there's a better choice.
Trusted TV news anchor in America.
Nightly news, I'm Lester Holt.
More Americans watch NBC News than any other news organization in the world.
Welcome back to Belgian Rule. Today marks 2 years since the deadly Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, when neo-Confederate, neo-Nazis, and other alt-right followers gathered to protest the planned removal of a Robert E. Lee statue. In the violence, Heather Heyer lost her life. When a vehicle plowed into counter-protesters, she was killed by a white supremacist attending the rally. He was given a life sentence for her death and the injuries inflicted on others that he ran down. Now the white supremacist groups involved in the rally are being targeted by the very same laws that were instrumental in dismantling the Ku Klux Klan. Joining us now is Amy Spitalik, Executive Director of the civil rights advocacy organization Integrity First for America. Amy, thank you for joining me. You penned a really interesting op-ed for NBC News Think, talking specifically about this law and how it's being used now. Explain.
So the Ku Klux Klan Act was first passed in 1871 during the Reconstructionist era as a means to combat the vigilante violence that Ku Klux Klan members were bringing to the South after recently freed slaves were given new rights. It is stunning that nearly 150 years later we need to use it to take on white supremacists and groups responsible for orchestrating the Charlottesville violence.
And how are you doing that?
So what happened in Charlottesville was not spontaneous. The violence was planned for months in advance. On a chat platform typically used by video gamers called Discord, these white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and hate groups had planned everything from what to wear, which weapons to bring, and whether they could run over protesters with cars and claim self-defense. Those chats are the basis for our suit because they illustrate a racially motivated conspiracy to bring violence to the streets of Charlottesville and harm people.
These groups traffic in conspiracy theories, and they get those conspiracy theories out there on YouTube and other platforms, maybe to innocent people who are just in those video game chat rooms. What can we do to try to silence this? Because there's a lot of innocent people out there that start peddling these conspiracy theories because they believe they're true.
That's exactly right. Well, what we see in Charlottesville and in so many of the other extremist attacks since is the role of social media and other online platforms in not just perpetuating these conspiracy theories and this hate, but also actually inciting and promoting this violence so that the next disaffected white nationalist looks on, sees how the Christchurch shooter is glorified or something on the recommend. Exactly, and it just creates a cycle so that each attack inspires the next one.
We break it.
So there's a lot of things that need to be done. One, we are using the courts because we want to make clear that if you, whether you're an individual or a group, and you're part of these conspiracies to commit violence, we will take you on and we will bankrupt and dismantle your infrastructure. But that's only one piece of the puzzle. We also need a full, comprehensive approach to how these online platforms handle this. We can't simply deplatform these extremists from one site and then play a game of whack-a-mole in which we move on to the next one. We need to be looking at the full ecosystem, the social media sites, the web hosting companies, and everything in between.
Well, Amy, thank you so much. Thanks for having all this information. Amy Spitalik. Moving on, today in El Paso, it is just 9 days after one of the worst mass shootings in the United States history. And tens of thousands of children there, they went back to school. But you know who's still on recess? Congress. You don't have to be. Mitch McConnell can call them back next when we look at the politics of guns. You're watching Belgian Rules.
I don't.
Bad. Ready to break through allergy congestion? Reach for the dual action of Allegra D, the fastest non-drowsy antihistamine plus a powerful decongestant to help you overcome tough symptoms.
Don't want to try.
Get back to the moment with Allegra D.
Here's Angie's List because they can always find great local pros.
For any type of home. I use Angie's List because it's free.
You check their ratings. They can even match my project qualifying prices.
Go to angiesList.com today.
Special favors. Just a gift, really is. And it's the state. I managed to book the last room for $150. I booked the last room a few months back. I booked the last room a week ago. I booked yesterday. $99. What? Some hotel booking sites panic you into booking the last room, but they often don't have all the availability. Instead, use Trivago. Trivago will search for available rooms and compare hotel prices from hundreds of websites worldwide. At least I got the last ticket today. Hotel. Trivago.
Do you have concerns about the memory loss related to aging? Prevagen is the #1 pharmacist-recommended memory supplement. You can find it in the vitamin aisle in stores everywhere. Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
Let's see. Aleve is proven better in pain than Tylenol extra strength.
Let's go. Bang that
And lasts longer with fewer pills. So I'm
Get done.
I'll take Aleve.
Aleve, proven better on pain.
Oh my fucking god.
Fail. He borrowed billions.
Another pain.
Left the trail of bankruptcy and broken down. He hasn't changed. I started a tiny investment business and over 27 years grew it successfully to $36 billion. I'm Tom Steyer, and I approve this message. I'm running for president because unlike other candidates, I can go head to head with Donald Trump on the economy and expose him for what he is, a fraud and a failure. As captain, it's my duty to keep watch of my crew because things can get dangerous out there. But lucky for me, these guys are pros, which gives me some downtime. My favorite shows streaming on demand with the Dish Anywhere app. Anywhere I have signal.
Look how extended he is. Oh my god. I hate it so.
All included with my
Extended.
I can stream on my schedule and on my mobile device. I'm in complete control of everything on this show. Great job, boys.
Oh my god. Alright, man. We're gonna be here for We're gonna be here for a long fucking time, man. Let's figure it out. Yeah, he was there. Okay.
They're completely different. It's becoming too much of customers' car insurance when not easy. They'll only pay for what they need. Yes, and they could save the time. Only pay for what you need.
Those are the options.
Welcome back to Belgium. Nearly 60,000 public school students in El Paso, Texas, started their first day of school this morning. That, of course, was just 9 days after one of the deadliest mass shootings in American history. In the wake of this tragedy, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has given no indication that he will cut Congress's August recess short to take up new gun reform legislation. This month alone in the U.S., 460 people
It
were
can't hold the flip.
And this year, there have been 9,087 gun deaths. Joining me now, the Executive Director of the Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence, Robin Thomas. Robin, many people are discouraged that Mitch McConnell is not calling Congress back into session. But give us an idea of how guns have changed in terms of being a campaign issue over the last few election cycles. If you think back to 2008, you had none of the 9 Democratic hopefuls talking guns when they launched their campaigns. In the last election, one, but it wasn't a clear focus, certainly not between President Trump and Hillary Clinton. Today, 14 of the 26 Democrats running have had guns in their first launch to running for president. How much has sentiment and demand changed around putting gun safety first?
You know, I think that particularly since 2012 in the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School, this issue has changed dramatically for the American people and for those running for office. We're seeing all of these Democratic candidates putting forth incredibly robust platforms. We've seen dozens, in fact hundreds of candidates in the last election cycle win for office on a platform that highlights their position on gun safety. So we're seeing the shift is in the actual election results themselves. The shift is in politicians being willing to talk about this. And really, there's a dramatic change in energy amongst the American people, and I think we're seeing that across the board, even up to President Trump making comments about the need for progress on this issue.
Mike Bloomberg talked about that very momentum and how you're seeing changes in election results. Take a look.
In 2018, we had an election, and there were 24 congressional candidates that we supported that were good on guns and good on the environment. 21 of them won, and they won against NRA A-rated members. A-rated members. So
It's gonna be a long day. A lot of work's gonna be put in that.
Really
He's just not ready to make it.
You gotta stop this craziness. And that's true if you ask NRA members, gun owners. They all want you to stop this craziness.
Oh, I can't bend this leg. Can't bend it.
Public sentiment is aligned with what voters are asking for. If that's the case, what isn't motivating Mitch McConnell to act?
I mean, I think
Fucking
for
tired of
many
this.
years, the NRA
See why?
and the gun industry has been
Takes up
so
so much
dominant
damn
on
fucking
this
time.
point. It's been very much a
Sick.
trivial issue. And I think that really has changed. But sometimes these politicians seem to lag with what's going on around them. They're still beholden to folks at the NRA instead of listening to their constituents, instead of listening to the public.
And there are people within the NRA, like Mike Bloomberg saying, there are members of the NRA
Sick.
who are saying, we're responsible gun owners, we hunt in hunting season, but we certainly don't need an assault rifle.
Absolutely, and they're fully in support of things like universal background checks. So when they poll NRA members and gun owners, they're very much in support of these common sense measures. So the issue is really internally within the NRA, and it's really fascinating because the NRA seems to be having a huge amount of internal dissent right now. So you have to wonder what's going on inside of that organization, that it's not doing very well, certainly as far as we're seeing publicly.
Yeah,
But I do think that there's still a stranglehold of those at the top, the folks that are actually making all that money, doing all that weird stuff.
I can't.
They are giving a stranglehold over the NRA's policies and over the politicians that the NRA feeds so much money to.
Well, we'll see, Robin. There's a lot of people out there in the country who don't consider guns a political issue. Safety first, something everybody wants. Robin Thomas, thank you so much. I hand you off to my friend and colleague, Chris Jackson, who starts now. Hey.
Thank you, Stephanie. Safety first should not be that complicated.
No.
Good afternoon. I am Chris Jansing in for Katie Tur. It's 11 a.m. out west, 2 p.m. in the east. Questions are mounting this hour following the death of Wilmington seer and registered sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Right now, officials say the signs point to death by suicide in his Manhattan jail cell. But the medical examiner also says more time is needed before an official cause can be determined. And if that determination is officially suicide, how was the most high-profile prisoner in America able to do it in a jail that's been called the Guantanamo of New York? Of course, Epstein faced sex trafficking charges and hundreds of documents released just a day before his death, named for powerful and wealthy people. Well, today, Attorney General William Barr made it clear the investigations into Epstein's alleged crimes are far from over.
Sick of it.
We will get to the
I can't believe I'm doing this, wasting my time and energy.
there will be accountability. But let me assure you that this case will continue on against anyone who was complicit with Epstein. Any co-conspirators should not rest easy. The victims deserve justice.
Come on.
In fact, the Wall Street Journal suggests with Epstein, the pressure is already on to prosecute any associates who might have helped him recruit young girls. And the New York Times reports that investigators may also turn their focus to Epstein's financial history. Where did his great wealth come from? But first, the circumstances surrounding Epstein's death are being investigated by both the FBI and the Department of Justice. The internet was flooded with conspiracy theories following the news. And then President Trump threw a match on an already smoldering fire, retweeting toxic and baseless conspiracy theories that implicate the Clintons in Epstein's death. So our big question today is, following his death, what are the next steps for the Epstein investigation? Joining me now, NBC News investigations reporter Tom Winter, former federal prosecutor Doug Burns, and Washington Post national security reporter Declan Barrett. So Tom, clock's ticking. When can we expect to learn more about the circumstances surrounding Epstein's death?
I think you're going to see an investigation here, Chris, that's going to take some time. I don't expect
that we're going to hear anything over the next few days as far as how this is going to go. Basically, what the chief medical examiner here in New York has asked is that her folks, hey, work with law enforcement. They may have some questions and some things that they found about Epstein's either past medically or some of the things that they found on his body during the course of their autopsy. They go back to the FBI and federal investigators to say, hey, can we find out more about this or that as a hypothetical? In addition, the FBI's investigation may help inform the medical examiner's investigation in her autopsy. So that's what's going to be going on. There's no rush to do this. I mean, we're scrutinizing this already. This is going to be scrutinized for the next 15, 20 years. This death, this case, it is become a life of its own. The things that Epstein either pleaded guilty to or is accused of doing are horrific. So I think right now they want to take their time and they want to get this done. I would not be surprised if it takes several more days, even weeks, for us to get a conclusion from the medical.
Although the pressure is definitely on, a lot of questions being asked out on a new report that corrections officers did not follow protocol in Epstein's death. What did you find out?
Right, we're told that in normal circumstances, guards and corrections officers should have been checking on Epstein about every 30 minutes. And for several hours before his body was found, that wasn't done. Is the investigators' current understanding of the situation. There's a lot more we need to know. There's a lot more evidence that needs to be reviewed, specifically the videotapes. But I do think it's an alarming signal as to how this might have gone wrong for the Justice Department and the Bureau of Prisons. You've already got the Attorney General blasting the Bureau of Prisons over the handling of something that happened just a couple days ago.
And if you back up even before what you say, Devlin, if he should have checked every 30 minutes, he had been on suicide watch, which would have meant he was watched 24/7. That was lifted, which already a lot of people who know the system, who have been in the system as lawyers, whether it's or people who have worked in jails in particular, have said, how did that happen?
Right, and that's obviously a big part of this investigation. I think one of the things to know about Suicide Watch is it's designed to deal with an immediate risk of suicide. It's not really designed to prevent with the sort of more general atmospheric risk. So there's going to be a lot of questions about why exactly was the decision made to pull him off Suicide Watch. But a lot of people don't want to be on Suicide Watch. It's a weird dynamic that happens inside prisons where Suicide Watch is itself an uncomfortable and pleasant thing. And so even people who might want to hurt themselves want to get off that Suicide Watch as quickly as they can.
All of this leads us to the questions that A.G. Barr raised, which is who else might be a target of this investigation. Here's what Senator Ben Sasse wrote in a letter to the Attorney General. The Department of Justice failed, and today Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators think they might have just gotten one last sweetheart deal. Every single person in the Justice Department, from your main Justice Headquarters staff all the way to the night shift jailer, knew this man was a suicide risk and that his dark secrets couldn't be allowed to die with him. Obviously, heads must roll. So this was not a run-of-the-mill jail. It was not a run-of-the-mill defendant. It was not a run-of-the-mill case. This is a facility that has held El Chapo, Gotti, Madoff. They know how to do this. It's known for its stringent security measures. And then you have a guy who's been in the headlines now for literally weeks. This should have been exactly the place for someone like Epstein.
I've been in the building many times over the last 3 decades. I've been in the special housing here. And you're right. I mean, it's a really shocking and surprising development. I always kind of keep it a little close to the vest, and working off my colleague's point, Tom is right. It's going to take time, and we need to figure out a lot of things, like exactly what happened, exactly what's the autopsy result, exactly what photos and or video surveillance is that we can look at. Interview of witnesses, obviously critically important, and all of that's going to have to be done. Back to the legal point, though, very important, somewhat of a clarification. To the extent anybody thinks that, his death, that lets co-conspirators off the hook, that's not accurate legally at all on any level. Overextended. Can be the same exact case, and indeed, I'll find one on the pencil, which is it's unlikely to hear from the defendant in a case, for instance, I.E. Epstein, except for something in the right, he probably wouldn't have testified. So the point is, if they want to make the case, and I'm not editorializing whether they will or not, because they may not actually, but if they want to go forward in the case against the conspirators, it's the same witnesses which are the victims.
One of the things that was pointed out in a statement about the autopsy was that now Michael however you want to describe it. I've been in the courtroom with Michael Biden on many occasions before. He did the JFK assassination. He did Phil Spector. He did O.J. Simpson. He did most recently Aaron Hernandez. What does it tell you, or does it tell us anything that Michael Biden's here?
I think, look, the family has the right to have somebody that's there. I don't think the financial resources are a challenge, and I'm not implying that Dr. Michael Biden charged some outrageous amount for this, but financial resources are not a problem in this instance for the estate of Jeffrey Epstein. So I think when we look at this and we look at Biden being there, look, they want to have somebody in who, he's perceived as an absolute expert in this field. I know that not everybody would agree with that in the legal field, and not everybody would agree with that assessment, but he is who he is, and he is somebody who has earned respect over the years.
Definitely. Is he an insurance policy in the case of a wrong death lawsuit?
No, I think so. I mean, look, last night it caught me a little by surprise when they came around and they said, they're going to announce the autopsy results tonight. So I'm saying to myself, oh, this is an issue. We need more information to do that. I thought that was very unusual and interesting.
Okay, Doug Burns, Tom Winter, Devlin Barrett, thank you so much. And all these questions, the hows and the whys, the mysterious nature of Epstein's death, if you want to call it that, combined with the rumors of powerful figures calling the alleged crime, sent conspiracy theorists into overdrive. Soon, Clinton's was a trending topic, and it was the third highest trending topic when President Trump added fuel to the fire, retweeting unfounded comments tying Epstein's death to the Clinton family. Joining me, PBS NewsHour White House correspondent and MSNBC political contributor Yamiche Alcindor, and former spokesman for Hillary Clinton, Phil Brenes. Yamiche, President Trump has long trafficked in conspiracy theories. To name a few, birtherism. He tried to tie pictures of death to the JFK assassination. He called global warming a Chinese hoax. He called Clinton administration and false death very fishy. This is nothing new for President Trump. But is it just politics, or does he believe his political rivals might have had a hand in killing Jeffrey Epstein?
It's very hard to say, but as you said, the president has long trafficked in conspiracy theories. He also said that the late Justice Anthony Scalia might have been murdered. So what you have is the president over and over again, at least toying with the idea of these conspiracy theories. In this case, he has several conspiracy theories focused on that might, in his mind, help him politically, because when I go to rallies for the president, or when I talk to supporters of the president, they are still laser focused on Hillary Clinton. And at times when you listen to the president talk at his rallies, it's almost like we're back in 2016, where he's still kind of talking about Hillary Clinton and people are still shouting, lock her up. So in some ways, this could be about giving up his faith, but this also could just be the president throwing it out there as he does, and his supporters welcome the idea that he's engaging with a conversation that people maybe are having around their dinner table, which is, how could this have happened?
Yeah, Philippe, I wonder, were you at all surprised?
Stepping off.
That the president retweeted this unfounded French conspiracy theory to his 63 million followers?
Not in the least. I mean, this was not the first time he's been doing this. Don't forget, birtherism was a conspiracy theory, and he was the biggest proponent and most responsible for its spreading, and that goes back 8 years. He surrounds himself with people. I mean, if you look at who he's invited to the White House, as recently as a couple of weeks ago when they had their, whatever they called it, their jamboree for just absolutely cringe people on the internet, these are the people that are moving these things. And I don't think there's a whole lot more thought to it than he just likes stirring the pot. But yeah, I do believe he thinks it. I think he believes it in part because, in his case, conspiracy theories are a better alternative than the conspiracy, not necessarily with Epstein, but of course you'd want to call Russia and what happened with Comey a conspiracy theory, because the alternative is the truth, which is that he was involved in something he shouldn't have been involved in.
So Kellyanne Conway was asked on Fox News, by the way, about the retweet, and here's what she said.
Back on the retweet quickly, it's clear what he's trying to say, wasn't it?
He can't do it.
Oh my fucking. And trying to connect the president to this monster from years ago, where they're seen dancing in a video, versus other people who were actively, I suppose, flying around with this monster on his island, which was known as Pedophilia Island. Perhaps there's a public interest in knowing more about that. She
The president wants this investigated, but I suppose you could make an argument that in any other administration, there might be calls for the Attorney General to lose his job over this. I mean, the response, again, does not answer the question.
She was not answering the question, but she was making it clear that Jeffrey Epstein is seen as a monster. But she also wasn't talking about the fact that the president had a long, close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He has yet to ever say why the two had a falling out. He has never explained why they were having a private party with some 24 women, just him and Jeffrey Epstein. And when he was asked about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein on the lawn at the White House at one point, he said, you know, at least I wasn't on the island. There are other people who were on the island. So it really was the president saying, okay, I was close to him, but you should really look at these other people who even have a more maybe convoluted relationship with him. So I think what you see is the White House trying to say that the president is not trafficking in a conspiracy theory when obviously he is. And of course, the Attorney General was very clear today. He said he was worried about the sort of situation around Jeffrey Epstein's death and he wants to have an investigation. It seems as though the FBI and the DOJ are doing something happening. But this wasn't the president calling for an investigation. Instead, this was the president retweeting a conspiracy theory. And as you said, he launched his political career on a conspiracy theory, which was President Obama wasn't born in this country. So he's seen conspiracy theories help him over and over again. And this time, in his mind, it doesn't look like it's going to be any different.
So,
Chris,
go ahead. I was just going to say that in the New York Times, Charlie Warsaw writes very thoughtfully about how our information systems in general and Twitter in particular have fueled this poison of conspiracies. On the other hand, the unfounded accusations against the Clintons go back to Vince Foster, who committed suicide 13 years before, frankly, Twitter was even created. So, as someone who worked inside the campaign, who understands what it's like to be receiving end of this, how can it be stopped? Can it be stopped?
No. And not only have I been part of it, I mean, I've been simultaneously accused of being one of their hitmen and also warned that if I don't watch my step, the Clintons will kill me. I mean, these people are out of their mind. The big problem that you're alluding to in terms of the differences in how we communicate, you know, there's still a fair number of people who believe that there were a number of people more than on the grassy knoll. Now, the problem with that is maybe you have a great uncle who still believes it and you laugh him off. But there wasn't someone didn't take their rifle and walk around Washington, D.C. looking for who they believed were the other gunmen who killed Kennedy. Now we have people acting on things. So look at what happened with so-called Pizzagate. You had this crazy conspiracy theory that the Democrats are in charge of some
you're offended.
And it was operated out of a pizza store. Now, this guy came to D.C. to shoot up a pizza store where there were kids. This is where you can do something about it, which is that a normal human being like Donald Trump would not take advantage of these things. He would not have people at his rallies holding up Q signs. He would not have people standing behind his desk smiling so that other people can think it's legitimate. Whether he needs them or not, it really doesn't matter. When I said no, there's something to do about it, there is one person that could do a little bit more about it. He's Donald Trump, and he could care less what they do for it. And the problem is, you now have half of the media in the form of the right-wing, Fox, etc., who are not presenting these things as theories. They're presenting them as fact. Imagine if that had happened in 1963 when people were saying, you know, you had half the media just stating as fact that Kennedy was assassinated by some deep state, blah, 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 LBJ defense contractor thing. You would have a lot more people believing it, and that's what we're living in.
Billy, thank you so much. Janice, you're going to come back a little bit later on in this hour. And still to come, we are live in Mississippi just days after those massive ICE raids. The community so shaken, they fear going about their normal lives. Plus the return of the Joe Biden gap. But it doesn't really matter to voters, particularly in a potential head-to-head matchup with Donald Trump. First, the 2020 contenders promised to lead on gun control, but what's the reality back in Washington?
I wanted more from my COPD medicine. That's why I got the power of 1, 2, 3 medicine spectrology, the only FDA-approved 3-in-1 COPD treatment.
Look at him step off. He's too far back. He's too far back.
3 ways to open airways, keep them open, and reduce inflammation for 24 hours of better breathing.
Trelegy won't replace a rescue inhaler for sudden breathing problems. Trelegy is not for asthma. Tell your doctor if you have a heart condition or high blood pressure. Do not take Trelegy more than prescribed. Trelegy may increase your risk of thrush, pneumonia, and osteoporosis. Call your doctor if worsened breathing, chest pain, mouth or tongue swelling, problems urinating, vision changes, or eye pain occur.
Think your COPD medicine is doing enough? Maybe you should think again. Ask your doctor about once-daily Trelegy and the power of 1, 2, 3. Save at Trelegy.com.
This was me before Liberty Mutual customized my car insurance so I would pay for what I need.
And this is me now.
Any physical changes to wristbands payments are purely coincidental.
Only pay for what you need.
Back on the board.
My husband and I are remodeling our
Back on the board.
I don't want to get contracts.
He's gotta stop it. He's gotta stop it. It's back on the board. It's not a recipe for success at all. He's putting too much weight on the back of the board.
Can't expect your neighbor
Too
to
much
do
weight.
everything all the best you can. So just ask me. Cover it up. That's what I did when I started this podcast. And I realized I could actually use them. Now I use keeps, the easiest way to keep my hair. And it only costs $1, which means no more covering up. Get started at keeps.com.
Yes, it's the first word of any new discovery. But when allergies attack, the excitement fades. Allegra helps you say yes with the fastest non-drowsy allergy relief, and turn any half-hearted yes into an all-in yes. Allegra, live your life, not your allergies.
As someone living with COPD, I know how difficult it can be.
Look at him fall off that board. He's a pro at falling off.
I was becoming less active, and I didn't have a lot of options. I felt like I was getting by. I was ready for better care, even a ray of hope.
There is now an alternative treatment option for chronic disease sufferers from the Lung Health Institute.
It's unacceptable.
Patients' own cells are innovative
Nope.
therapies.
Get too much weight on the backside of the board. Look what's happening.
Natural process. Call 866-732 today to discuss your treatment options.
Cell therapy gave me the answers I was looking for. And now, I'm that guy to do what I love.
With an over 95% satisfaction rate, we help patients nationwide. Call the Lung Health Institute today to discuss your treatment options at 866-732-LUNG.
Donald Trump said we're like living in a third world country when it comes to our infrastructure. Do you agree?
I don't disagree.
To kill a bill. It's very easy to do. The hard part is actually passing. We depend on transit. We depend on roads.
Why is it not getting funding it needs?
You're dealing with things that could potentially shut down traffic into and out of here soon.
What's at stake?
Catastrophe. You never get punished for doing nothing.
It is one big, giant swamp.
In the aftermath of the mass shootings in Dayton, Ohio and El Paso, Texas, new evidence that the debate over guns is now central to the 2020 campaign. Over the weekend, 16 candidates taking part in one forum in Iowa, a powerful sign that the path to the nomination must include a plan to end gun violence. And candidates weren't mincing words.
Did Donald Trump cause those folks to be killed? Well, no, of course he didn't pull the trigger, but he's certainly been tweeting out the ammunition.
Harris was not alone in drawing a line between the president's rhetoric and the rise in violence tied to white nationalism. And we also saw candidate Andrew Yang move to tears after meeting a mom whose 4-year-old daughter was killed by a stray bullet.
I have a 6 and 3-year-old boy. That's a match me. I was imagining it was one of them that got shot, and the other saw it. I'm so sorry.
A lot of parents can relate to that. Also at the forum was frontrunner Joe Biden, who on the same day released an op-ed in the New York Times promising to ban assault weapons if elected president. Quote, if we cannot rise to meet this moment, it won't be just a political failure. It will be a moral one. It will mean that we accept the next inevitable tragedy. Joining me, two men who know the politics of guns well from the inside of Congress. Former spokesman to House Speaker John Boehner, Michael Steele, and Democratic strategist and former Senate leadership aide Joel Payne. So Joel, is this a moment that is Democrats' best chance at passing gun reform? Do you think something has fundamentally changed in the public psyche to the extent that it's going to put the pressure on Congress to do something?
It absolutely should be a moment, and Chris,
should be or will be?
Well, should be, and time will tell if it will be. Here's what I've been saying, and I've been saying this for a little while now. Democrats and the progressives and the left, we've won the culture war on guns, right? I mean, there's kind of no doubt about it. It's a 90% issue in terms of background checks. 54% of Republicans support it. It's a 60% issue in terms of banning assault weapons. So, like, the results are in here. What has not happened is Democrats turning this into a voting issue. You saw some powerful appeals that you just showed there this weekend from Yang and Harris and others. Joe Biden talking very stridently about banning assault weapons. But are Democrats actually going to use this as the hammer that they need to use it as to punish Republicans? Not just try to whip up Democratic energy, but to actually punish Republicans who actively stop any attempts to rein in gun control. I think that's the tipping point that we have to see.
Well, Joel, clearly, if you look at those polls, Democrats have public sentiment on their side. But is this something that is going to move Mitch McConnell at all? I mean, he has given no indication that he feels any sense of urgency on this.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. It's the Democrats' responsibility. If you're Amy McGrath, you need to move Mitch McConnell. You need to organize around this issue. If you're a Democrat running against Pat Toomey, not in 2020, but in 2022, the fact that Pat Toomey has not necessarily been a part of the solution on gun control, you need to penalize him for that. That's where Democrats, I think, have not taken advantage of this. This is a moment unlike any other because, again, I think the culture war of guns has been won by progressives, and I think Democrats have to use that hammer to actually execute a plan to act on gun control now that they've got that public support behind them.
Michael, today our first green team pointed out the divide over gun issues, and it's between rural state Republicans in many cases and big state Republicans. Senators like John Barrasso of Wyoming, Steve Daines of Montana expressing concerns about more gun laws versus, say, a Rick Scott of Florida or Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, who have had a little more indication that they might be able to support some things. But even with that, does nothing get done unless Donald Trump picks up the phone, calls Mitch McConnell, and says, okay, we're going to do this?
Yes. What is required here is presidential leadership. The only way we're going to make progress right now, and I think we can make progress. I think that Republicans who represent suburban districts, Republicans hoping to represent suburban districts and states in large suburban areas in the future understand that sensible, limited, effective gun safety changes are necessary to win those votes. But it is going to take discipline and consistency from the President of the United States. He's going to have to outline those changes that he will support, perhaps expanded background checks, perhaps limitations on large magazines. He's going to have to say those things publicly and stick with it in the face of blowback from the right-wing media, from the Rush Limbaughs of the world, from the NRA. And I think that that is definitely possible. I think it is electorally smart. And that's what we need to see from the president in order to get Republicans on Capitol Hill to move.
Guys, we have some breaking news. Pete Williams joins me now. And Pete, I understand there is some new information on the shooting in Dayton, Ohio.
New charges against a friend of Connor Betts, the man who carried out the mass shooting. Authorities revealed today that on Friday, they arrested a 24-year-old from Kettering, that's a suburb of Dayton, named Ethan Colley. Now, they don't accuse him of anything, knowing anything about the shooting, but here's what they say, that he has admitted that he bought for Betts some of the items that Betts used in the shooting attack, including body armor, part of the AR-15 weapon, a part of it that's not federally regulated, and also the 100-round magazine that authorities say was used in the shooting. Now, the Dayton police had said that Betts had 2 of them. The U.S. Attorney and the FBI today say that Colley admits that he bought the one used in the shooting. You're looking at the 2 there on the screen in the bottom. That's the picture that the Dayton police had put out. But in any event, they say he had no indication that he knew Betts would conduct this attack, that he did not intentionally participate in anything to do with the shooting. But what they say is that earlier this year, Colley bought body armor, part of the weapon, the magazine, and told the Federal Bureau investigation and ATF agents who talked to him that he did it because Betts asked him to keep it in Colley's apartment so that Betts could hide it from Betts' parents. And then 10 weeks ago, according to court documents, Betts came to the house. The two of them put the item together, put the rifle together, and kept it there. And then they say about 6 to 8 weeks ago, Betts came back, retrieved the weapon, got the body armor and the magazine. And they also say that these two men were friends. Colley says that he told the federal agents that the two of them did marijuana and, as it says in the court documents, acid, presumably LSD, 4 to 5 times a week from 2014 to 2015. Now, the actual charges against Colley today are separate from the shooting. The charges are that he bought a handgun, and when he did so, he checked on the federal form that he was not a drug user. They say that was a lie, and they say, so that's one charge. And then the second charge is continuing to possess a handgun while he is a drug user. That makes you unqualified under federal law to have a weapon if you're a regular drug user. So there's no allegation that the weapon that he bought, the handgun, had anything to do with the shooting. Instead, they say he bought these items for Betts at Betts' request so that his parents wouldn't know he was getting them. But the FBI and the U.S. Attorney both repeatedly said during a news conference today that there's no indication that Colley knew what Betts was planning.
Pete Williams, thanks for that. Michael, let me go back to you, because one of the things that he bought was this 100-round magazine. There's been a lot of conversation about background checks about these red flag laws. I know a lot of gun owners. I don't know one who says, yeah, I need, for my sports shooting, a 100-round magazine. I mean, realistically, again, as somebody who knew this from the inside, where can Democrats go that Republicans may actually listen to their voters?
Yeah, I think that the restrictions on large magazines of this magnitude, are a sensible place to go in this debate. I know that people in rural areas use weapons as to control predators on their land, for people want to be prepared to defend their homes, but I can't see any justification for having something like a 100-round magazine that is clearly a weapon of war widely available to civilians. And I think that that is a place where we ought to be able to start to find that common ground that allows us to make progress on this issue in a way that will have obvious, tangible benefits.
Joel Sherman-Edler last week declared that his committee was conducting an impeachment inquiry into the president. He is going to be directly involved in negotiations on gun control. Is the president looking at that? Is it going to be harder to strike a deal with people he sees who's trying to remove him from office? What do you see sort of as the inner working here, if indeed President Trump needs to get on board for anything to happen between now and 2021?
Well, I'll use one word here, trust. And, Michael touched on this a bit. I noticed some of the language coming out of Leader McConnell's office, and to me, as someone who's worked in a leadership office, I can pick it out pretty easily. You can tell that Mitch McConnell does not want to own this issue. He keeps putting it back on Donald Trump. He keeps, even when he suggested that McConnell was already on board. McConnell's people pushed back and said, no, we have not made that decision yet. The president
same with the NRA. Things that the president said the NRA was on board with. We haven't heard that from the NRA.
Absolutely. And the president, if you'll compensated within kind of the highest ranks of Republican leadership, the president doesn't want to own it. Mitch McConnell doesn't want to own it. And Mitch McConnell doesn't trust this president. Remember, he was burned once before. He's been burned several times before by this president in pulling the rug from under him on important legislative initiatives. I don't think McConnell is comfortable with that either.
Joel Payne, you're going to be back in a few minutes. Michael Steele, always appreciate your time. Thank you, sir. And up next, the return of the Joe Biden gas machine. But will that matter in a potential race against Donald Trump?
Check out Fresh Start from Nutrisystem. Lose up to 13 pounds in your first month, guaranteed.
Lose your first 13 pounds down with Fresh Start from Nutrisystem.
Give me that. Give me a second here.
No, not with Nutrisystem.
Order your 28-day program right now, and we'll rush you
your system, and you can too.
Your first 13 pounds?
Go online or call 888-960-59 right now.
Wow, he's too far back.
Most people think a button is just a button. That a speaker is just a speaker. Or that the journey can't be the destination.
Gotta get this like
Most people haven't driven on it yet.
Discover the Lincoln approach to craftsmanship at a Lincoln Summer Vacation. Right now, get 0% APR on all 2019 Lincoln vehicles plus no payments for 30 days. Only at your Lincoln dealer. If you want to do a little fishing, you don't fish it up. And if you want to take a bath, you just fill up the tub, not a swimming pool. So if you don't use your cell phone that much, why pay for more than you need? For as low as $20 a month, you can get talk, text, and data at Super Cellular with no contract and connections on the nation's largest wireless networks. It's easy to switch. Activation is free, and if you like, you can even keep your phone and number. Also receive award-winning customer support. Super Cellular has received the J.D. Power Award for highest customer service 6 times in a row, and you get a simple, easy-to-understand bill with no surprises. Plus, they've been an approved AARP provider for over 10 years.
back to the board. That is just so.
Start saving with Consumer Cellular. You can get talk, text, and data for as low as $20 a month. Switch today with our 30-day guarantee. It's 100% risk-free. Call 1-800-358-7790. Go online or find us at Target.
The Democratic frontrunner and self-described gas machine, Joe Biden, had a rough couple of days on the trail. On Saturday, Biden said he'd met with survivors of the Parkland shooting while vice president. That shooting happened more than a year after he left office. His staff says he met at Newtown. He also flubbed the line at the Iowa State Fair, saying, "We choose truth over facts." And he confused the late British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher with the very much alive German Chancellor Angela Merkel. At a fundraiser on Sunday, Biden misstated the locations of recent mass shootings, saying they happened in Houston and Michigan. Those shootings, of course, took place in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio. And Biden raised eyebrows on Thursday night when he said, "Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids." He immediately corrected himself. Unsurprisingly, President Trump seized on those missteps, tweeting, "Does anybody really believe he is mentally fit to be president? We are playing in a very big and complicated world. Joe doesn't have a clue." Well, we should note that this critique from Donald Trump comes just as the Washington Post fact checker has clocked Trump at over 12,000 false or misleading claims in his 928 days in office. According to them, that breaks down to an average of 13 fishy claims a day.
Right.
But even more, 20 a day, since he passed the 10,000 mark. In other words, it's getting worse. Joining me, Democratic strategist and former Senate leadership aide, Joel Payne is back. Also, Reuters White House correspondent Jeff Mason joins. So, Joel, how damaging do you think this last week has been for Biden? So much of his standing in the polls, frankly, is about electability, and if Democrats start to perceive he's looking tired or he's giving Donald Trump a target, is it a problem?
It's a problem if it becomes a narrative that really starts to play out. And look, it certainly has taken hold in some circles. I don't think any of this is about Joe Biden's content. I think it's about the endurance of a long campaign, which, by the way, even people who are 15 or 20 years younger than Joe Biden, right, who may not be at the stage in their career that he is, would probably struggle with as well. This is a long-distance marathon. One thing I will not stand for is talking about anyone's mental fitness to be president. I'm sorry, that is laughable. That should be rejected outright. I'm still trying to figure out what the word confefe is. So Donald Trump has no standing to question anyone's mental fitness to be president.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff, obviously anybody who actually becomes the nominee is going to be a Twitter target for Donald Trump. That is a given. Does it make it any less effective, his Twitter bully pulpit, when he is the guy who, as the Washington Post puts it, spouts exaggerations, boasts, and outright falsehoods at a remarkable pace?
Well, it depends, Chris, on who's reading those and who's reacting to them. I mean, the president's base, the people who support President Trump have accepted that and or decided that what he's saying when they are false, when his sayings or the issues that he's discussing are not true, that they are. So that is accepted and tolerated by people who are already Trump supporters. Does that undercut him with other voters? For sure. Is that something that the Biden campaign and any other campaign, if it's not Joe Biden who ends up becoming the nominee, would focus on? Absolutely. But in the meantime, as you said, and this is certainly true, the president is going to focus on gaps from Joe Biden because he's leading in the polls and because he might end up being his opponent.
Joe, Paul Wallman, opinion writer for the Washington Post, kind of backs up exactly what you're saying. He wrote this: when the president of the United States is the most prolific in American political history, he just passed 12,000 false or misleading claims, and is waging a re-election campaign based on racism and fear, the idea that gaps are an important campaign issue is particularly offensive. I challenge anyone to try to explain how the number of gaps a candidate utters actually tells us something meaningful about his or her prospective presidency. In the end, and I'm sure Joe Biden wishes he had some of the things he says back, as have many candidates over the years, is he being held to a different standard than the president?
I think everyone's held to a different standard than the president, and that's a pretty obvious point. I think what Joe Biden is dealing with, look, it's the issue that everyone's tiptoeing around. He would be, 78 years old or something like that when he would be inaugurated president, and I think that there is an age issue that is floating out there. It's interesting that age issue does not come up when you talk about Bernie Sanders. Frankly, it really doesn't come up like it should when you talk about Donald Trump, but it's unfortunately that's the world that Joe Biden is presented and that his campaign has to mitigate. I think
Oh my God.
it's interesting. They actually really pulled back his schedule early on, I think in part to protect their candidate. As someone who's been on a campaign, you can tell the hallmarks of that. They really went out of their way to make sure that he was not tired, that he was not overwhelmed with schedule. I wouldn't be surprised if you actually saw them pull back a bit on his schedule coming up here soon, just again to protect his candidate, and to allow him kind of the opportunity to kind of get his sea legs under him.
Look, we haven't done any polling on this, Jeff Mason, but the Wall Street Journal did speak to Biden's supporters in Iowa. They pretty much seem to give him a pass.
This is what happens when
a 57-year-old nurse manager said, quote, I really don't think there's anything concerning at this point with that. I work with the president we have in office right now, Francis Colson. The gaps in and of themselves do not necessarily trouble me, but he needs to learn to be more disciplined in his message. And Jennifer Van Devere said that because Mr. Biden is fielding questions constantly,
Too far back again.
understandable.
Wow, this is
Well,
not.
that's happened at every age, you know, so that doesn't bother me because I think in his heart, he's a good person. Ultimately, when Trump goes after him for this, is he just speaking to his base?
Again, he's way off his mark.
Well, I think so, yes. But I think he's also a candidate now. President Trump, of course, is a candidate for re-election. He's also looking for weaknesses in the people who might be running against him. And he sees that as a weakness.
On everything.
But I think the quotes that you just read will be very heartening to the Biden campaign. I think it's also worth noting this is a candidate now, Vice President Biden, who has been in the public sphere for decades. He's had a reputation for these gaps for decades, but he's also gotten pretty high up and done just fine despite that reputation. Does that mean he's going to become the nominee? No. Does it mean it's not a weakness for him against President Donald Trump? Of course not. But he has managed to make it through, and I think when voters look at what is a gap or what is the weight we should give to a gap versus what is the weight we should give to an untruth coming from the Republican nominee, if you're a Democratic voter, that is probably...
Look at this. It's the left flag, man. The left flag is not getting the job. Look at this.
Much appreciated. Well, Biden gaps weren't the only time.
Oh my God.
Iowa State Fair. Trump's trade war with China is obviously extremely relevant in Iowa, a state which, according to the USDA, has more than 86,000 farms. NBC News reports that since the fight began, U.S. agriculture exports to China have plummeted from $19.5 billion in 2017 to just $9.2 billion in 2018. Government figures show farm bankruptcies are on the rise, up 13%. And Iowa State University polled farmers in Iowa, Illinois, and Minnesota. 76% believe they will bear the brunt of the tariff fight. Joining me now from Des Moines, Iowa, NBC News political reporter Vaughn Hilliger. Vaughn, you've been talking to farmers out there in Iowa. What have they told you about whether or not